Welcome to the Black Empowerment Hub podcast, Power in Politics, where we explore leadership, policy, and progress while amplifying the voices shaping our communities. I'm your host, Jacqueline Malone, CEO of Blind Resistance Clothing Brand. Our tagline, For the Culture, by the Culture, reflects our commitment to empowerment, sustainability, and uplifting underserved Black communities. Thank you for tuning in. To stay up to date on future episodes, please like this episode, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell icon. In today's episode, we're exploring the transformative power of leadership and service. I'm thrilled to introduce a remarkable guest whose work exemplifies these values. Crystal G. Melton, First Lady of Gary, Indiana, will join us right after this short message.
This episode is brought to you by the Support Black Excellence Foundation and their Support Excellence Initiative. At the Support Black Excellence Foundation, we're on a mission to foster a brighter future for all, particularly in underserved Black communities. Through strategic partnerships, mentorship programs, community service projects, and financial initiatives, we are committed to driving meaningful change where it's needed most. We invite you to join us in this remarkable journey of progress and transformation. Together, we can turn our vision into a reality. Let's shape a future that is equitable and inclusive, where empowerment, elevation, and excellence intersect to create a legacy of positive change. Thank you to the Support Black Excellence Foundation and their Support Excellence Initiative for sponsoring this podcast.
Welcome back. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Crystal G. Melton, First Lady of Gary, Indiana, and the wife of Mayor Eddie D. Melton, a shining example of women in leadership. Crystal has built an impressive career spanning banking, academia, and community service. With a political science degree from Northwestern University and an MBA from Indiana Wesleyan University, she has seamlessly blended her academic achievements with a deep passion for empowering others. As a devoted wife and mother, Crystal advocates for literacy, youth empowerment, and the overall well-being of her community. Her leadership and dedication to service inspire women everywhere to lead with grace and purpose. Crystal, welcome to the podcast. It's an honor to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
And before we begin, we here at the Black Empowerment Hub podcast would like to take a moment to extend our deepest condolences to the Melton family on the passing of Mayor Eddie D. Melton's father, your father-in-law, Eddie J. Melton. Our thoughts and prayers are with the entire family during this difficult time, and may his legacy of love, wisdom, service, and sacrifice to this nation continue to inspire and uplift those he leaves behind.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your condolences and kind words. Thank you.
You're welcome. As we honor his memory and the remarkable impact of his life, let us shift our focus to celebrating the leadership and dedication of those who embody his values. To start, I'd like to ease into our conversation with an icebreaker question. If you could sit down and have a meaningful conversation with any historical figure or leader, who would it be, and what's the one question you'd ask them?
This is a very interesting yet thought-provoking question all at the same time. The only person I've ever said really that, I really would like to sit down and talk to this person, being a woman of faith, would be the Apostle Paul. And my reason for wanting to sit down and talk to him is because after studying, of course, my Bible and studying his life, I am so blessed by his conversion from persecuting Christians to becoming one of the most influential Christians ever. And so I just have some questions for him. Some of the core scriptures in my life he wrote, they were in his letters. He would be the person. He would be the one person that I would love to really sit down with to better understand, get a first person account on his journey, in his transformation from, Saul to Paul. So he would be that one person for me.
I really love that answer. A lot of times we get the folks in entertainment or someone in the spotlight for us, but I love that you went back to scripture. That says a lot about you and your foundation. Your career has traversed multiple sectors, including banking, labor relations, operations, and academia. How have these transitions shaped your leadership style and approach to service?
So my transition into banking came directly out of college. While I was in college, I used to work for a local bank during the summer. So once I graduated, I knew that there was something in banking that truly drew me and interested me. The relationships with people, helping people to reach their financial goals. I went for a career in banking. I started off in the management training program, and then immediately became the banking center manager officer of my various locations. And so in banking began to change a little bit throughout the years. And some of the reasons why I wanted to be in the industry at that time started to shift. And so the one thing that I really loved and I knew I had a heart for was people. That was the underlying of that experience, and building those relationships and really making a difference in people's lives. And so I wanted to then take what I really enjoyed about the people aspect, and then I went into HR. I wanted to kind of use some of those skill sets that I did learn. And there was a lot of HR functions to my job anyway. So I think that transition for me was a pretty smooth transition. And so when I started at NIPSCO, where I've been now for over 14 years, I did start out in the labor relations department. I had no experience in labor. But that role and being in that department for that amount of time really taught me a lot about labor relations and bargaining and things of that nature. So um, it was at NIPSCO when I decided to go back and get my MBA. During that whole process, I noticed that I had a passion for teaching and a gift for it. And people would tell me, you really need to teach and speak, and you're just so good at, just different things. So after I graduated, maybe a few years later, is when I wanted to really get into being an adjunct faculty, adjunct professor. And so I've been that for about 7 years now. So I think all of my skill sets along the way in the banking industry, building relationships, navigating through NIPSCO to where I am now on the operations side of the business 14 years later. And then in academia really helped to shape the leadership styles that I have today. So, but that's kind of the course of my journey.
That's really amazing. I love that teacher aspect of it too. In my family, we have a little line of educators, and I consider myself a bit of one too. Even with this podcast, it's like teaching folks about folks. So you grew up in Northwest Indiana, Hammond, Indiana, to be exact. And what experiences or influences from your upbringing sparked your passion for service and leadership? And I will say this: I often say that we look at the breadcrumbs of our lives, and that trail often leads to our purpose or some state thereof. And so I like to equate that into positive outcomes, albeit that's not always the case. But in yours, let's see what your upbringing brings you to.
So for me, I have amazing parents. They were true examples. My dad has been a pastor for well over 50 something years. He is 88 years old today. And I've watched him give his life to the people of God, meaning commit his life, his time, his talent, his treasure to people for the betterment of people. And my mom, who you won't ever see her standing before crowds, or she's a quiet, kind of to herself woman, but I have never met a purer heart than my mom. And so watching her, even on her more of an individual level and in the community, be of service to other people and helping people in the community. So when I've, growing up with these amazing people around me of influence, even from a young age, I remember kindergarten wanting to stay in and help to tutor my classmates, doing community service and things of that nature. So being with my grandfather at the polls and helping when election time came. So again, when you have those positive and strong examples in your life, it's so easy to kind of want to follow in their footsteps, because you see what a difference it can make in other people's lives. And I said, I want to make that same impact as I grow and as I develop and start to walk into my purpose.
Wow. And it's interesting. I had a feeling your breadcrumbs would have led you just where you are today. So that's really amazing. I wouldn't be surprised if you move even further beyond what you do today and into politics and leadership. I'm really excited to see what your future holds. I think it's going to be really great. This next question, before I proceed with the following question, I have to give a quick shout out to two family members. Della Ann Bird, we call her Auntie Ann, and her daughter, my first cousin, April Bird. They are both Deltas.
Now you started something.
I know. That's why I'm giving this shout out now to tell them, yes, I have your sorority sister sitting in front of me. You're welcome. So I
Absolutely.
just want to give that little staple. Okay, now we
Please
can
give my
continue.
love to my sorors, please.
Okay, so your community involvement spans organizations like Delta Sigma Theta, the NAACP, and Hoosier Women Forward. How do you balance these commitments while driving impactful change in Gary?
You know, um, it's a balancing act, right? You can't overextend yourself, or else you will be ineffective and unproductive, right? So I've learned that. But when I believe in the mission and the vision of an organization, that's how I make my decisions what to be involved with, whether it be on a state level, because there are some state boards and organization that I'm a part of, some of which I got more involved when Eddie was down in the legislature. And then, of course, there are some community boards here in Northwest Indiana. But I think it's just really balancing my time, not allowing anything to pull me too far away, because my heart is here in the community in Gary, in which I serve. But I am committed to people, and I love people, and I love helping people. So I think a lot of the my involvement down in the various organizations, I'm able to bring resources, make different partnerships that I think are beneficial here for the city of Gary.
Mm. And as the First Lady, literacy and youth empowerment are at the core of your initiatives. Could you explain your vision for these programs and outline any strategies you plan to implement to make a lasting impact?
Sure. So when Eddie was officially mayor elect last November, and the first thing I kind of asked myself was, okay, what's going to be my role? Right. I don't believe every first lady has, the same vision or whatever. So for me, it was like, okay, how am I going to personalize it and really make it into something that I can have a lasting impact? And so for me, I've always had a passion for education. And so, I equate literacy with freedom.
Mm.
And Frederick Douglass had this, it's like you're not free. It's like if you're not able to read, then you don't really have freedom. And I believe that all of our young people and parents and community as a whole, you know, we should be free. And it starts there. I feel like it's foundational. So it was a very easy one for me as far as which direction I wanted to go in. And so the first thing I did was I went to visit each school, every public school,
Mm.
including the Career Center, including the preschools, as well as faith-based schools and charter schools. Because when you talk about partnership and really making a difference, you can't do that until you actually go talk to the people who do the work each and every day. And so that's where I started. From there, understanding some of the challenges that they had, I started what's called the First Lady Literacy Task Force. And so what that is a group of volunteers who want to go into the schools to read to the scholars, and want to be that help. They have a heart to want to help our young scholars here in the city. And so we're still in the process. I'm working with the superintendent and her chief academic officer. Actually, I have a meeting with them this upcoming week. We have a list of people who have already passed all the background checks and all of that. So we can actually get an orientation going, get them onboarded and ready to go. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about pulling people in the community, making those connections. Maybe it's something people always wanted to do, but they're like, I don't really know how to, get in to do that. So making those connections. I think just supporting literacy initiatives within the city is always important. So I've been to a Charter School of Dunes, for example. They invited me in. And so I led a couple of discussions on The Skin I'm In, the book that they were reading. And so that was really great. Any literacy initiatives throughout the city, I try to participate in and be a face, because it is very, very much important to me. Being involved in bringing national authors like Mamie Ali here to the city of Gary and Raquel Horn here, where they're actually being able to meet influential authors and ask questions, and also getting them. We had a contest when Mamie Ali was here. And so it's not just about the literacy piece of it and bringing the excitement, but it was always the written piece. They were writing prompts, and we were awarding students based on their writing. So it's just really trying to get people excited about literacy, get the young people excited, and bringing resources through partnership to our young scholars and, quite honestly, parents. Because what I am learning is that there's a literacy gap amongst our parents as well.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one right there with the parents, because individuals often forget the extension of those kids and where they're coming from. Once they leave that school, they have to go home to someone. And so those are the biggest influencers in their lives, and then they come back to you. So it's a balancing act there.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're touching on that extended family. And I want to say too, I had talked about educators in my family, from classroom administration to mental health I have. And my aunt, whom I mentioned at the top, was the superintendent of Gary School Systems for many, many years. Yes. And she would be so proud to know that you are focused on this literacy and youth empowerment, and that you have a very provocative plan to be able to push that initiative forward. So she's going to be very happy when she sees this podcast. Yeah. Can you tell us about a success story that has inspired your work in literacy or youth initiatives, if you have any?
I think the one thing that when I think of success, I think of the work that, first of all, the partnership. I think that's a success for sure, because partnership can't happen if everyone is not working together. So I feel like I have a really strong relationship with the administrators in most of the schools here. Like I said, not just public, charter, faith-based as well. So that partnership is kind of where it starts, the desire. The new superintendent, when I first met her, literacy is her passion. So it was like, oh, this couldn't be a better connection here. So I would say that when I think of success and what it is that we're doing, I think of that partnership being formed, and I really think good things coming from that. I also think about the things that are currently happening in schools that I feel like sometimes we don't really tell our stories. So what I mean by that is when I went to Bethune, which is the preschool, and these young people, because they're little people, they're learning how to plant their own fruits and vegetables. Like, they have gardens there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was happening. You know what I mean? Like, because you wouldn't know unless you go and actually find out what it is that they're learning and what they're doing. When I think of just success, and I think of success in the schools, I think of the beautiful brand new media center at Westside High School. I think that's a success, and all that they're doing around STEM. They have 3D printers. They're able to make plaques and do the etching for plaques. And what they're really teaching our young people is really amazing. They have podcast studio there. They have just so much that I don't think people really know. But definitely more to come. I said I just really want to focus on just really telling our story, telling the good things and the success that really is coming out of the Gary schools. Because sometimes you don't hear that. You may hear something completely different. So I definitely am a cheerleader for the city, for our schools, for our scholars. So I do think all of that is definitely a success. But I think there's so much more to come in the near future.
Yes, and you mentioned West Side High School. That was my old high school. Yes, I attended West Side High School. I love that school. To hear about how it's just formed into this wonderful institution to date makes me really, really happy because a lot of my old schools, like my elementary school, my middle school, they're gone. Ivanhoe and Edison Middle School, but we still have West Side.
Yeah.
So I'm just really proud of the school and what they're doing with the children today. So let's move to mental health and maybe some physical health advocacy pieces. There's a stigma that remains a barrier in the Black community. And some might argue that that barrier crosses color lines, preventing many from seeking care that they need. And in contrast, my organization, Support Black Excellence Foundation, Inc., we're making strides to provide resources for mental health. However, the dismantling of that stigma still requires a deeper cultural engagement.
Mhm.
What strategies or initiatives are you leading to dismantle the stigma and promote open dialogue in Gary, if any?
So when I first started, again, thinking about things that were important to me, literacy was one, physical and mental health was the other. And for me, I'm open about the importance of mental health. And even in my communication and conversations with people, I see a therapist. I'm not shy. It doesn't make me less of a woman. It doesn't make me weak. When I was approaching 40, I said, you know what, Crystal, I really want to be the best version of myself. And I knew that one of the steps that I needed to take in order to do that was to get into therapy. And so I think just that advocacy piece, that, not making it a stigma, being okay to talk about mental health, and not being ashamed of it, and that there is really power and strength in it. And especially when you're trying to be the best person and the best version of yourself. There are things from the little Crystal back when I was a young girl and things that I have to work through. And a lot of times we carry those things with us. And now, if we don't heal from that, get the proper tools to kind of work through those things, now we have families of our own. Now we're impacting our children. Now we're impacting other relationships. And so for me, that's where it starts. When I looked at the first 4 years, I said, year one, we're going to really try to get into this whole literacy space. I think I'm going to start to really move into the focusing on that mental, physical health. As we go into probably sometime next year, mid next year to the latter part of next year, I'll start to do some initiatives around that, because part of it is just stepping up. And because people look at you and they think, oh, you got it all going on all the time. You just perfect. You just, life can't be any better. And so I've always tried to be my authentic self. Always. I'm From time I was a little person to now. I think when you are honest and authentic, you can reach way more people than when you're trying to be something or somebody else or whatever. So that's going to be a real focus for me coming into probably middle part of next year. I wanted to really get in and hone in on literacy initially, make those partnerships, those relationships and connections. And then I'll start to really focus in on that as I get this part going.
Actually, that mental health piece goes with everything. And if you think about the literacy program that you're working on, mental health is probably a big part of that in most of these children's and the parents' lives as well. So you actually working on self first, of course, because how can you help anyone else if you don't do that? But then also understanding that that could be a main component in why a person is not learning at the level they should or whatnot. So you just have to consider all of that in it. So I'm really glad that these are initiatives that you are focusing on. I think they're both very, very important. Let's move to high profile roles. So 2024 has been a milestone year with your husband's inauguration. How has this transition shaped your role as a wife, mother, and now first lady? And what have you learned through this experience?
Eddie, as you may know, was in the Senate. He was in the legislature prior to his, becoming mayor of the city of Gary. So we had a little practice, prior to him becoming mayor, because he was, there for about 7+ years before he was sworn in. But I think that transition, because politics or high profile or that kind of life wasn't really new, I think that helped make the transition smooth. When I think of transition, I think of family, because you got to remember we have 4 children.
Mhm.
One is an adult, and the other one is in college, and we saw 2 in high school. So you have to, that transition impacts our children. So I think that, once he was elected mayor, it really, I think, helped, because it's like, okay, you're at home, which helps, where the 7 years before, a quarter of the time, the first quarter of the year, he spent
Mm.
most of his time down in Indianapolis. So that transition, I think, has been a pretty smooth one. This time around, it's different, so I'm not going to act like it's the same thing. It's not. It is definitely very different. But I think that for the children, making sure that we keep family first, making sure that we keep in open communication with our children, and being able to communicate those expectations to them. And as far as my role is concerned, I just wanted to be authentically who I am in the role. I never looked back on any other first lady trying to figure out what they did or how they did it. I knew what I wanted to do, and so it came from my heart, and so I just kind of led with that. And so, in partnership, we are working to try to really build a greater Gary, Indiana.
That's wonderful. And in supporting your husband, you're serving as first lady, and that does still bring some unique pressures. What strategies help you maintain your individuality and authenticity? You mentioned that a lot, and I'm curious to know, like, what you actually do. Do you have any type of mantras or anything that you actually do to maintain that?
To maintain my balance, I think my faith gives me some balance, my purpose, and understanding who I am and whose I am. I think when I think of balance, I think of family and friends. I have the most amazing friends that kind of help with that balance. I think that, um, you know, understanding that you can only do so much. So being wise with which you can become a part of, because at first everybody wants you on the boards or everybody wants you, and it's kind of like, again, is it something that aligns with my passion? Because there's a lot of things I like to do, there's a lot of things that are important, but then I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I have 2 jobs. You know what I mean? So you kind of got to balance it all, you can't do it all. So I think that helps to lead me into what it is that I want to do. But yeah, my faith is a big one. I take time for myself. I just start really learning that. I take my spa time. Sometimes you just have to shut off. I've got a whole new cell phone that is just like, hey, when I go out of town, or, anytime that I take a quick little vacation, I know how to say, okay, we're going to turn that other number off, and I'm going to have, the one cell phone that don't nobody have but my kids and my mom or whatever, so, and my husband. But you have to have balance. Because again, remember, I want to be the best version of myself. And if I don't have that balance, then it's hard to be that best version. So,
And I was going to ask you about that travel piece too, because I had heard about you loving to travel. I'll ask you that a little bit
mhm.
later. What advice would you give to ladies wanting to be in leadership?
I think that one of the things that I would say too is just kind of whatever you're good at, whatever that craft is that you're good at. So let's just say, you're at a job and you're like, hey, I want to ascend. I want to continue to, go higher. I think honing in on that craft or whatever that is, what does that mean? Maybe going back and if you really like project management, well, go get your certificate in
Mhm.
project management. Make yourself more marketable with your education or certificates. Get a mentor. I have a mentor at work, and it's honestly priceless. I don't know it all. I don't even begin to know it all. And so really making those relationships. And connecting with other like-minded people, other like women, we are just amazing, right? There are women that are really doing some amazing things that I've learned so much from. So not being shy, I stepped out there. I didn't even know I was on a call with someone and I didn't even know who she was and had never met her before. And so she worked out, I believe, in Columbus. And so I sent her a little email like, hey, I want to connect with you and things like that. So not being afraid to do that. I think my board involvement has really helped me. I've learned a lot from my board involvement over the years. So if there's again, a board that you can get on, I think that really that can really help you in your knowledge and forming different relationships. I think it's really, really important. Taking different classes and stuff about,
Mhm.
leadership. I think there's amazing books about servant. And for me, it's like, I want to be a servant leader, So there's so many books that I've read and things that I've done and people that I've talked to try to get these little nuggets along the way. So there's a lot of things I feel like we can do as women or as people if we want to continue to grow as a leader.
Yes, those are very good steps. I have taken many of those steps myself, and they do work. They help you to build character and to become who you want to be. What practical steps can women take to prepare for leadership, particularly in the face of systemic barriers? Now that's a little different because there is that imbalance there, and but you have given some good nuggets already. So
Mhm.
is there anything else on top of that?
Um, I think that there's some people somewhere doing what you want to do. So again, I think
Mhm.
that really making those connections, I do really think are important, especially if there are people in a particular industry that have kind of broken the ceiling, so to speak, or I think trying to really make those kind of connections if possible. Network is everything. I'm gonna tell you that now, and I'm sure you know that.
Oh yeah.
Networking, it's not always about who the smartest person was in the room, from your education, or even sometimes, unfortunately, not even experience. Networking and knowing people and getting out there is really, I think, key for everything. It seems to be, it's not what it
Yes,
used to be, but now networking is everything. So I
it
think
is.
that, when you find someone doing what you're trying to do, don't be shy, because I'm sure she had to overcome a lot to get to where she is.
Mm.
And so I know from experience, she can give you the nuggets and give you, a little bit of advice to help you along the way. But I think that as women and as people in general, we have to be okay with helping each other as well and not compete with
Amen.
one another. We can't be competing with each other. It's like wanting to reach back and to help because that's really what it's all about. That's what it means to be a servant leader. Reach back and help somebody else. You got there and you didn't get there by yourself. I can tell you that. So people have helped you along the way. You've had access, you've had opportunities. So why not provide those opportunities and that access for somebody else? So I do think that that is incredibly important, especially with, to your point, with the barriers that we have to face as women, as Black women, in particular. So yes, I think that probably is one of the key things in believing in yourself. And again, just taking those opportunities, make it to where, you are like the subject matter expert in whatever area that is. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of where which you sometime, unfortunately, but you have to do. Those are just some things that I think that we can do to ascend, continue to ascend, and overcome some of the barriers that are placed in front of us.
Yes, and I also think too in that, I mean, you've pretty much said this in so many of your statements right there, but never giving up and kick that darn door open, so don't wait to be invited.
Mm-hmm.
Go make your own table, those types of things. You really have to have that thought process to be able to move ahead and to see yourself, envision yourself as this entity that you wish to be. And you can do it. Just keep believing that. And I think with people like you at the forefront of being such a great leader and role model, not just in a position, but you as a person, like a human. You are a beautiful human. So I think that goes above any title or status, honestly, Crystal, because I look at the person. Who are they at heart? And so I think with role models like you and others at the head,
Mm-hmm.
that we can look up to that and be able to reach those goals. So, as First Lady of Gary, your role carries significant influence, even without formal political power. With the new administration entering the White House, how do you use your platform as First Lady to advocate for policies that uplift women? And how would you approach addressing legislation that could negatively impact a woman's well being?
So for me, I try to connect myself with even with organizations that are doing great work. I'm part of what's called Girl Coalition. On the advisory council. The sole mission is to make life better for our young girls here in the state of Indiana. And so one person can't do it all, but when you connect with another entity of people, we go down to the state house and lobby. Another passion is young girls. One of the things that I'm working on is starting my own mentoring company. I've already laid the foundation for it. I'm just need to take it to the next step. But young girls are very much a passion because when I look at some of the things that I see, some things are very heartbreaking for me. And some of our girls don't have access. Some of our girls don't have the resources. They don't have the ability to be able to, like even something simple. When I've sponsored for young people to go to the state house, and it's like some of them hadn't left Gary. They hadn't left Northwest Indiana. They don't know who their senator is. They've had an opportunity to meet their legislators. The partnership with other organizations that are doing some of the work that you're passionate about, where you can bring your resources and your influence to the table to go into lobby and to help push your agenda that is going to help your community. I feel like God has given me a platform. I know people throughout the country because, first going to school, I went to Northwestern. So many of the people I know and friends, they're all over the world. They're federal judges, they're legislators, they're everywhere. So I have a lot of great relationships that I have formed prior to Eddie ever being in the political arena. And so, but now, with the last 8 years, again, using those connections, using my influence and to help push the things that the agenda, things that are really important here to us in, Northwest Indiana, and not being afraid to do that. I spoke at Women in AACP. I was one of their speakers as they tried to kind of ignite the chapter here. And there was just so many things that needed to be hit on and talked about, and really trying to engage other people in the process. Because what people don't really understand is, there's some things that we can do here locally to help change the trajectory of some of the things happening in, especially like, where I have more experiences on the state level. It's like, Eddie used to tell people like, hey, if it's the schools, for example, or there's a particular bill that we need dead because it's going to harm us, sitting back in Northwest Indiana and talking about it's not going to help that. Getting on the bus, which we have, going down to the state house. When they see all them folks coming, it's like, whoa, versus nobody's calling, nobody's writing letters, we're not going down there. They're like, well, not a big deal, So, I mean, we have to, I think as leaders, we have to definitely be the voice for our community, but also really empowering people to that their voice is important, and we can do way more as a collective than we can as individuals, you know what I mean, or people, us working in
Mhm.
silos. So I think that's just some of the things that I can do, that I have done, especially here more on the state level, but then as you start looking at more of a federal level, using the relationships I have on the federal level as well to kind of help push certain things, agendas that will really help us back here at home. It's a lot. And I know we have amazing legislators, we have amazing congressmen, Congressmember Van, and people that are down there really in DC that's really fighting for us, and other legislators. So I think it's a collective effort for sure.
Yeah, and I think we're really going to need that, Crystal,
Mhm.
come these next 4 years. I think we're going to need everyone to just band together on a lot of different things. It doesn't matter what party you are.
Yeah.
I just think we all need to come together, and because there's going to be initiatives that we do agree
Mhm.
on both sides of the table, but then there are going to be some things that we're really going to have to battle for. And it's a matter of survival for us. So I'm really happy that you're going to be utilizing those connections that you have, and just having that passion and motivation within yourself to push forward is really, really needed, because Mayor Melton, I'm going to be respectful of his title. Mayor Melton will definitely continue on his side of it, but having you push on that other side is just a double whammy of greatness. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And let's move a little into your family balance and personal inspiration. So, with a very busy schedule that includes professional work, volunteering, and being a wife and mother, what strategies help you maintain balance and stay grounded? Well, we already talked a little about that, so we don't have to dive too much deep into that.
Mhm.
But I asked you earlier about a specific mantra, quote, or piece of advice that consistently inspires or grounds you.
Mhm.
And I know you talked about your biblical stance, but
Mhm.
is there a scripture or something specific that you go to each time? Because I think those things are important too.
I think Galatians 6:9 is the big one for me. Not growing weary in well doing, for in
Oh,
due season you shall reap if you faint not.
yes.
Um, there are core scriptures to me that keep me going right when you want to give up, right in that
Mm,
time where the work that you're doing is important. You're touching lives, but sometimes we don't see the impact of it right away. And so that is a scripture to me that um, I hold near and dear, especially when I feel weary. Because if we're honest, we all get weary sometimes,
yes.
right? And so I would say that that scripture helps me to stay the course. You talk about resiliency, not giving up. We talked about that. That is a core scripture for me. And when I think about just my overall purpose, right? And you're trying to stay on course. And sometimes you get discouraged and not want to lose sight. And sometimes you feel like am I doing this right? Am I being as impactful? God has also told us that being confident of this very thing, that he who has started a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. So like it's gonna happen. We just have to believe it. Um, God's gonna do exactly what He says He's gonna do. We just have to really keep the faith, keep our eyes on Him. For me, because like I said, I'm a woman of faith,
Mm,
unapologetically. Because without that at my core, I really don't know where I'll be. I don't even want to know where I'll be. And, I'm still growing. I've clearly not arrived, as I continue to keep working on my relationship and, not getting distracted and, things like that. But yeah, I'm on the potter's wheel. I'm definitely a work in progress. But without that rock,
Mhm.
wouldn't even be, nothing would be possible. So,
Amen. That's what I say, that everything we do, you have to have the core foundation of God.
mm,
Underneath it is not you doing this. You're doing the work for the kingdom
yep,
of God. And He's the one who puts this in us, into our spirit, and gives us the plan and purpose for our lives. This is why He says, this is what you should do and carry forth. And that scripture that you gave is so true. That touched me
mhm,
so much because it is the truth of it. It is hard doing good.
I know.
It is hard being on that, walking that narrow path of that, because as far as you don't quickly see the outcome of it, but you're steady going, you're like, am I doing the right thing? You start second guessing, but then you remember that God doesn't lie, and
Mhm.
what He showed you is truth, and you do have to continue with that faith in Him. And I agree, I cannot do anything without God. It is everything, is that foundation for me, everything.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the travel. I'm going to bring that back because I love traveling too. And I just think it's just a wonderful thing to kind of get away.
Mhm.
So, how has exploring new destinations influenced your perspective on leadership and service?
You know, I think that, so first of all, when I think of, just travel, so if you know me, California is my spot. Okay. And it's so funny because, for many reasons, we'll put it like that. But when I need to kind of get away sometime and I want to stay here in the States, I love to go to California. I love to sit out, and whether it's a hike or look at the mountains. Sometimes it's helpful for me to, kind of reset, right? And kind of get some clarity. It's hard to get clarity sometime at home because home is home, people pulling on you, and,
Mhm.
it's just so much happening here. So for me, travel helps me to reset. But then also, I always turn it even to a learning opportunity. So I can't tell you how many times, we've been to wherever, LA, we go to New York, we go, wherever, DC, whatever. And it's like you'll see something maybe that they're doing in the community, or like you'll see a park where it's like, oh, look at these parks, they're doing this, or whatever. And it's like, whether it's you're talking about it with each other, Eddie's calling somebody on his team, or whatever the case may be, it's always a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity because you learn from other people, right? And so, it's okay to steal shamelessly, right? Like, just kind of, when you see something that works and then you say, well, I wonder, because not everything that works in New York is going to work in Gary, right? Or in Manhattan, or in, different, boroughs in New York is going to necessarily work here, but there's some things that may work here, right? And so, so it's always an opportunity to learn, is always an opportunity to meet new people. I've met so many people on travel as well. And making those connections. Again, we've been talking so much about building that network is so important, is invaluable. So, any opportunity where we can meet new people, build the relationships, make those connections, get great ideas to bring back, attending different conferences. So, we go to different conferences in different places. And so, again, trying to bring that information and resources back and see if we can implement it here at home.
All right. Well, we're coming up on the last questions for the interview. If you could find one legacy to leave as First Lady of Gary, what would it be, and why is it personally meaningful to you?
A legacy that I would like to leave is just really having a heart for people, period. Not blue people, black people, white people, people, a heart for people. Now, obviously, we're predominantly African American here in Gary, but being nice, being a good person, loving everybody and wanting to really invest in other people. Because what is our greatest asset in the city? It's not the infrastructure. It's not like Michigan. It's people. It's people, right? And so want the legacy of having a heart for people, really being a true champion for education, and partnership. So those are some of the things that I would like to leave. Like when Eddie say, "Hey, we're done," and I want people pull back and say, "Okay, what did Crystal contribute?" That's what I want to leave behind.
That's beautiful. And you'll do it too. You'll do it. As the holiday season draws near,
Mhm.
how do you intend to spend it? And is there a specific tradition or activity in Gary that brings you joy?
I think that service with family. Um, last year, for example, we were at St. Timothy, and me, Eddie, the children, we were all helping to fix plates for people in the community. It is a blessing to serve. It is an honor to serve. And quite frankly, I feel like it is our duty and responsibility to serve. And so we try to instill that in our children. And so the kids will be going next weekend, all four, because I have the one home from college, and they're going to volunteer at this toy drive. And so, again, I think service is a big piece. As a tradition that we have, that we always do something every year as a family, and just spending time. Sometimes we have to take a pause in life because life moves fast. We're all over the place. I mean, the kids are doing this activities. Eddie's there, I'm here, whatever. And I think that one of the things that we have to do sometime is just pause and enjoy each other. Life is fleeting, and you always want to make time for the people that you love. And I think I'm looking forward to, in this holiday season, in addition to serving, is really spending time with my family and our parents and our loved ones, because it's unfortunate we've lost some great loved ones this year. And so it kind of made me realize even more the importance of slowing down and appreciating and spending time, quality time, not being on the phone, not kids playing the games, but just really spending the quality time with one another. And so that is what I'm very much looking forward to this season.
That is beautiful. And for those inspired by your work and eager to support your initiatives, what practical steps can they take to collaborate with you to uplift the Gary community and drive meaningful change?
Well, you can connect with me on my website, www.crystalmelton.com. Also, I am on social media. I am on Facebook as Crystal Melton. I'm on Instagram as CG underscore Melton. So those are some of the ways. My email address is firstladyofgary24@gmail.com. They want me to come out and speak or just visit, they're having some type of event that they just want me to come by and support. I really want to be supportive to the things and the initiatives that are going around in the city, and beyond, if it can help the city of Gary.
Well, Crystal, thank you for sharing your inspiring journey and impactful work in Gary. Your dedication to family, community, and empowerment is genuinely remarkable. As we approach the holiday season, your message of service and gratitude reminds us of our power to uplift one another. Thank you for your time, your wisdom, and the example you set as a leader.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me. Thank you.
To our listeners, we hope today's conversation has inspired you to uplift and empower those around you. If you're new to our channel or want to hear more impactful stories, don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to the Black Empowerment Hub podcast, Power in Politics, and share it with your friends and network. Your support helps us spotlight incredible leaders and drive meaningful conversations forward. Follow us on our new Instagram page at Black Empowerment Hub _ to stay connected and get updates on future episodes. Join us next, where we'll continue highlighting the individuals and initiatives transforming lives in our communities and beyond. Wishing you a joyful and reflective holiday season. Stay empowered, stay involved, and always remember, real change begins with us within our communities. See you next time.